Hello Karthik, how are you today?
I'm good, Kaushik. How are you?
Amazing as always. Alright Karthik, today we're bringing Shobhit on the show for all our people today. And Shobhit is a person who's been there from the pre-digital era, and he's a tech marketer today. He started out as a person who had no idea about tech, but he was this person who was always interested about what's new.
Hmm.
So, for example,
Yeah,
he was the first person to try InMails when they came out. He was the
yeah,
first person to get a new tech gadget as soon as it was out. So he talks a lot about this way in which keep keep looking forward to what is new and don't keep holding on to what worked.
exactly.
It's okay to experiment. So those are beautiful points from, and
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to talking to Shobhit today.
yeah. Because I remember having chatted with him, and he told me that he belonged to the pre-digital era at one point of time, and then the transition to digital era gave him so many different opportunities to explore and experiment. So yeah, let's chat up with him and get high on stories.
Let's get high on stories. This is the place where we bring you the best stories from around the world. Now let's bring Shobhit in.
Cheers, Shobhit. Thank you so much for joining today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you
You're
with us on
welcome.
High on Stories. Kaushik and I are really
Uh-huh.
excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm excited myself. Yeah, you very rarely marketers very rarely get to talk, right? Like we're a very silent species, so I'm pretty excited about getting to talk more.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, with all our guests, our flagship question on the High on Stories uh, episodes are, "What is your story?" So we'll start with that. What is your story, Shobhit?
Sure. I mean, my story is pretty standard. Nothing exceptional. I was born in the north of India. My
Mm-hmm.
father used to work for State Bank of India. Grew up all across India, so parts of UP, parts of Bombay. Uh, from almost like in the mid 90s is I think when I got really hooked onto tech. So I was probably the first kid in my class to get to yahoo.com or watch a video online and stuff like that. So I was really hooked onto technology as a concept. And then I did my engineering in computer science, but I was terrible at it. And as luck would have it, I managed to get into an MBA program straight out of college. And then even there, I kind of found marketing to be like a good vocation. So I think by the time I graduated in 2006, like technology plus marketing seemed like a good combination of things, which kind of fits my aptitude and my interest.
Correct.
Happened to start my career with a media group in Delhi called Hindustan Times. And I think what was very fortunate was, so back then there wasn't a lot of tech companies in India, right? Like, so the internet in India was largely run by media companies. So it was your Hindu and Hindustan Times and Times of India, of course. So I was kind of part of like an early group of people who were kind of invested or like, working on internet 8 years in India. And one thing I realized very quickly, at least at HT, was that there was a lot of tech to technology, which companies like HT didn't have. So I was lucky to kind of join HCL Technologies in their marketing team 2 years after that. And since then, I've only been in technology marketing. So I've kind of gone. I was in the US with HCL for a while, came back to India, joined Akamai. So I've been in different technology companies, in different marketing roles. So I've kind of been able to do the entire, like what technology marketing looked like in 2008 or 10 is obviously very different from what it is now.
Correct.
There was no digital marketing. Like I
Correct.
always very proudly say that, my first kind of bonus or first kind of big moment in my career was to introduce emails to my bosses and say, hey, we should use this. LinkedIn is good. And, and like, and 10 years ago, that was a pretty drastic leap, but obviously not anymore. So yeah, stuff. I mean, I've kind of been really fortunate in some ways, right place, right time. Kind of grown as the technology scene in India has grown, kind of grown as technology marketing has become more and more kind of sought after skill. And for the past 3-4 years, I've been with multiple startups here in Bangalore. I'm with one right now called Salesken, kind of leading their marketing function. Starting it at different stages of incubation and taking it to like a state of continuance from there on.
Awesome. When you mentioned about the fact that you wanted to introduce mails to your bosses, I am reminded of the fact in 1998 or 97, I guess, my elder brother, who is 5 years senior to me, he said he came and claimed in our home saying that he had his first email ID. and I was wondering what is an email
Right.
ID in 97.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I mentioned InMail. So, LinkedIn has this feature called InMails, which, so
correct.
before that, I mean, for somebody who probably does not know, it's kind of hard if you were in a business to business marketing team, right? Like if I want to reach out to Shobhit, who's the head of marketing for XYZ company, it's kind of hard to figure out their email address. And, LinkedIn kind of just, in one swoosh, made it super
Yeah,
simple. You just search Shobhit, head of marketing. There is a way to contact. And,
yeah,
people would get like one email a month, so it was pretty clutter breaking. And just kind of introducing that concept internally was a huge technology leap in 2010 or 11 maybe. Obviously now it's almost abused. Nobody
yeah.
considers it as a great idea.
Absolutely, absolutely.
True, true, true. Sure, but so there was one thing which you said that kind of took me aback, honestly. So when you started by saying that marketers don't often get to talk. They're the silent kind. Whereas I, for one, have always thought that marketers are generally the voice of a brand. They're the ones who go out of their way to talk about what we do to spread this massive vibe. So can you touch upon that as to
Yeah,
what the thought
I
process
was being
behind that?
sarcastic. I mean, obviously, marketers speak a lot, and so that was. I'm sorry. Yeah,
No issue.
No, I was just no because I
yeah.
found that extremely interesting when you brought that up
Yeah,
because it is
Yeah, no,
something
I
really
mean,
new.
obviously, speaking and talking, I mean, and that is a good skill that a marketer should have. And I think marketers do speak and talk a lot. So yeah.
Of course. And there was one more thing which you had mentioned. So you spoke about your beautiful transition, your career from a pre-tech era to beautifully coming into tech, and now SaaS is the hot thing.
Right.
And you've been there throughout the journey. You spoke about medias, HCL, and now even Akamai, and now all this entire journey. You've been there through the entire tech revolution,
Right.
as we call it. So how does demand generation look like? Because you even said how difficult it is to reach out to other people. So how do you create demand for the product you're with, Shobhit?
Right. I mean, see, look, demand generation is kind of almost like, so even before SaaS existed, right? So HCL was not a SaaS company, we were a services organization. And demand generation has always been kind of this motherlode of B2B marketing, which is, there is a sales team which kind of goes and, shakes hands and closes deals, but how do they kind of get those doors broken for them, or how do they get that first introduction? That's done by the marketing organization. So that handoff of, you kind of groom a customer to a point where the salesperson can talk and then hand over to the marketing organization. This has existed, I would say even before I was born, way back, go back to the early days of your IBMs and ADSs of the world and stuff like that. So demand generation has always been in existence. And when I say demand generation, when I started, and I was fortunate in that sense that in 2010, when I was in the US with HCL Technologies, demand generation was not really digital. It was literally, so I mean, I don't know if you guys are young enough to understand the concept of a Rolodex. So
yes.
salespeople used to have this
Yeah,
thing, literal like thing on their desk, which was a bunch of visiting cards that were prospective customers. And before your CRMs and stuff, like the marketer's job was to really collect like a deck of cards and make notes or whatever, and then hand it over to the salesperson. That is really what demand generation used to be. And the tactics, I mean, in some senses, like in the US, it's still the same. So one of the biggest tactics is obviously trade shows. So there's a whole bunch of trade shows which happen in the US, depending on the industry and persona and location. So you used to organize trade shows to kind of reach out to people at those trade shows, do a demonstration of your products and services, shake hands. Very very sort of old school. And that's really, for me, like the genesis of demand generation, really kind of getting those, getting a prospective customer or a buyer excited about your product or services. Obviously, digital marketing has changed that significantly, right? So even in 2018 or 2019, obviously 2020 is not a great year for events, but even 2019 or 2021, when they start again, um, the job of the digital marketing, or the opportunity of digital marketing is now exactly whom to target. So you have intent-based marketing. So like instead of blindly reaching out to like 100,000 people at an event, okay, here's 1,000 people that I need to go after and ensure that they come to my booth, or how to target them. So you kind of nurture them in advance. You drop an email chain to them, get them excited, do a
yeah,
setup with them. Then some of the problems in the past of, you've had a meeting or you've had a trade show with some trade show demo with somebody, and then they go back and the conversation just gets stopped. But now with digital marketing, obviously there's a bunch of nurture streams that you can put in there. So I think demand generation really is in its core, it's not changed. I think digital marketing has made it a lot smarter and a lot more cost effective and a lot less. I want to say, like, in 2010, it was a game of kind of people who had the most money, right? So when you go to like a huge trade show, the one with the largest booth and the snazziest demo obviously stands out, right? But in a digital sort of purchase and evaluation and research scenario, there is a sort of level playing field, and a smaller company or a newer company has the opportunity via content, and that's, I think, where content's kind of really kicked in the last 10 years. So content's really that level, that leveler, which allows people with better ideas and better tactics to outshine people with more money and more resources. So demand generation really is not changed. It's the idea of handing over that deck of cards or leads or whatever you want to call it, like in whichever system it is. But like, it's really kind of like this first chain in the assembly line of new customers that an organization has.
Beautiful, Shobhit. I love how you said it's not just frightening that person to come buy your product, but it's this beautiful journey of nurturing, and there's so much more demand generation more than that. Like it's a classical thing. It's what's always been there. So beautiful, Shobhit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think obviously now I see that I think there's probably companies which have a demand gen function where they've probably never done a physical trade show, or everybody has these Monday morning newsletters which they send out via email. In 2010, I used to actually physically interview people and go get like a dossier printed, and then I had like a 3,000 person mailing ID, and that would actually go. So a lot of those tactics really have not changed in the last 10 years. But what is obviously changed is the medium of distribution and how you can sort of measure and optimize and stuff like that, right? So that's really what it is.
Right. I think probably people have put a name to the word demand generation despite being in existence all the while, right? And Shobhit, we wanted to ask you this, and want to ask you this question to you particularly, because if we may call Hindustan Media HM a B2C company, right? I think their end consumers are B2C in some form. What has been your experience in marketing for a B2C company vis-a-vis marketing for a B2B company? What is the difference, and what does a marketer need to be wary of while he's transitioning from one to the other?
Sure. Just for clarification, and I'm sure people who tuned in may know this. Most media companies, specifically in India, are technically B2B and not B2C, because you are the product, you are not the consumer. The money is made through advertisements, and advertisements are bought by organizations and corporations. So working in a so the brand is kind of B2B and B2C, but like really the business is a very, very B2B business. And that's probably true for, Google, for instance, right? Google is not a B2C company, it's a B2B company. It makes money out of people like us, right? Like, it doesn't make money out of the end users, it makes money out of marketers across the world. So in that sense, it was still a B2B company, and and that's probably the only kind of time that I spent, extended amount of time in a B2C setup. I think, let's see, fundamentals of marketing don't change, right? Like, marketing is, for the most part, the same thing. It is about kind of, taking a bunch of technical features, or, if you're talking about a soap, taking like a bunch of chemicals, which really don't mean anything to the average person, and, translating it into ideas and stories that they can consume and get attached to, hopefully. I think the big difference in terms of job profile really is that, like, I think B2C is the emphasis of brand is pretty heavy on B2C. B2C, consumers, you're always thinking about aggregates. You're never thinking about like an individual. I never think about Karthik or Kaushik if I'm at HLL and thinking of building a blade or a soap. I'm thinking about people in Bangalore, or people in a city, or people in a certain demographic. I think with B2B, you tend to get, marketers tend to get more and more kind of laser focused on very, very small set of people. Not like, so you're not just talking about, if you're a Trust Desk, you're no longer just talking about, customers, you're talking about the head of service in that customer, and, you're trying to kind of personalize your marketing towards them. So I think the target of clusters versus individuals is a very big difference between B2B and B2C. The emphasis on branding is very different. And I think because of the emphasis of branding and sort of the intangibility of, so I mean, the historical axiom is that B2B buyers are very rational and B2C buyers are less rational. Although I don't always agree with that, but so given that there is a perceived sense of rationality in consumer purchases, from a marketing standpoint, I think the role of intangibles is a lot higher, right? So which is why if I was working for like the best B2B, I could be working for IBM or Oracle. Like I said, maybe we should hire Virat Kohli to promote our brand. I will get laughed out of that boardroom. But that is a very, very standard accepted practice for B2C. Like, what is the value of Virat Kohli versus maybe the fifth best batsman in India? I don't know. But like that intangibility is very well embraced in B2C, but it's not in B2B.
Yeah, awesome point there, Shobhit. Great points there.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And one thing which you said in between remind me of when we spoke to Vinita, who heads branding at Ramco Computers.
Ramco Systems, yeah.
Yeah, Ramco Systems. So she said that. So it reminded me of when you spoke about the chemicals, in which nobody cares what the chemicals are in that. What they want to know is what they get out of it. And she spoke about how this company just used the word clove, even though every toothpaste had clove. They emphasized on that, and because of that, it was a great boom here in India, which goes to show that everybody cares about what's in it for them. So I love how you spoke about that, show.
Yeah, that was the toothpaste brand promise in the early 80s and 90s. Shobhit, you probably would be aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've used it. Yeah.
They use the word clove oil inside the toothpaste. Probably every toothpaste has it in some form, like Kaushik is referring to.
Yeah, I mean, but like if you like really break down, every tech startup today claims artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is the clove oil of technology companies.
Yeah.
I say that as we're a company which is genuinely building an artificial intelligence product, and we're appalled every now and then to see, just like this basic automation being sold as artificial intelligence. That clove oil. So that I'm personally not like a big fan of. There's a huge difference, right? Like I think business purchases are also irrational and consumer purchases are also very rational. I don't think that. I think some of those differences are more emphasized than they actually are there in existence. I feel a good brand building or a good storytelling is consistent across mediums or industries.
Interesting. That was really interesting take, Shobhit. And as you mentioned about this consistent storytelling and marketing as such, again, you've seen quite a wide spectrum, the entire evolution as we spoke about. Which companies do you think are doing marketing really well, Shobhit? Like if someone would come and ask you, which playbook can I follow? Which marketing pages should I follow? Which companies would you suggest? Saying these guys, man, these guys are killing it. They're doing such a good job. Who would they be?
I mean, I think one thing that I feel very strongly as a marketer is that, so marketing is obviously, as everybody says, there's a science to marketing and there's an art to marketing. And to answer, who does the best marketing, you have to kind of go back to say, as a marketer or like as a artist of marketing, is it like somebody that I am appreciating for how they're executing? Or, if marketing is a science, then it's really down to outcomes, right? So and outcomes are defined by who has the best brand, who's able to command the maximum value for the product. And if you go by like the second logic, then obviously like your usual suspects of Apple, Tesla, the guys. I mean, they're commanding shareholder value, they're commanding brand premium on the pricing of the products. They have market shares which exceed anybody else. That becomes a pretty easy to answer question, right? So your Disney, your Marvel, your Apple, Tesla. In India, you'd probably go Geo, Royal Enfield. Some of those guys who really kind of very conventionally crack the code. I think if I had to kind of pick one company in India that I think does really well, because that's something that I've always struggled at myself, and in the organization I've been in. I think Swiggy is doing like a phenomenal job of what I call product marketing, which is this whole thing that I go back to of, there is a feature or there is a little bit of technology here. How do I tell it in very simple terms? So I'll give you like an example. If you remember the ad that they did with the, old uncle and auntie sitting at home and like a single gulab jamun gets ordered.
Yeah.
and he also goes out and he brings it up. I mean, that's essentially like it's a product feature, right? Like, so Swiggy is launching this new feature saying, hey, now you can order like a single piece of food. And because there's a misconception that online delivery of food involves like a party order or like 1,000 rupees or something like that, right? So they were just trying to convey this idea of like you can now order in these very, very small quantities.
Yeah.
But like given to a kind of tech marketer like myself, it would have been like this long list of bullet points and single item, unprecedented, whatever. But they did it really, really well, right? Like they humanized that one technical / business feature into a very relatable story. And I think that's, for me, like as an artist, I would say like Swiggy is doing a phenomenal job. So
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, and this is the first time I've heard someone say this, in which every time we ask who do you think is doing really well, they would give us names, but this is the first time someone's actually classified them into two tangible ways as to, hey, if you look at outcome, these guys are doing it well, and you look at the emotional connect, these guys are doing it well. Thank you for that, Shobhit.
Yeah, and
yeah.
the example as well, Kaushik, that Shobhit mentioned, in terms of making the simple, the smallest piece of food available to their customers. I think it resonates more with Indian brands because we've seen how sachets in shampoo kind of sold so well than the big bottles when it was introduced early on by Chick, right? So that kind of concept, breaking it into small, minute components sells really well in India. Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think if you know somebody from the FMCG background, right, like that sachet marketing or like sachet products is like a very common, everybody's like in every category is always trying to build like a sachet version of their product because it's a very well
exactly.
established thing that to acquire customers, you got to get down to like the lowest kind of minimum price point as possible. Um, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think consistently, and that's just one example that I can think of. But I've always found that Swiggy's kind of nailed this really well. Like
Yeah.
the marketing is telling a story, but it's kind of tied to the product that they have. Sometimes like there are brands which do like Nike is an example of a company that everybody loves for marketing, but I feel like the story they tell versus the product they have, like I don't kind of find the connect between the two. So they're like phenomenal pieces of advertisement to
Yeah.
watch, and a lot of cool visual language. But how does that connect to like a bunch of shoes and t-shirts and stuff? Like I've somehow never made that connection myself. I think with Swiggy, at least I can connect the dots.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. That also leads me to ask you this question. When you say that you're not able to connect a brand's marketing efforts with the product they're selling, what do you think marketers should stop doing today? That you really urge, maybe somewhere you want to get on top of the stage and tell marketers, hey guys, please don't do this. What is that one thing, Shobhit, from your end?
Your question was, what should marketers stop doing? I mean, two things. I think one thing I genuinely despise as a kind of layperson for marketers in India is they have to stop roping in celebrities for everything. I think that's a very lazy trope. And I understand the logic of kind of piggybacking on an existing kind of, credible person to build your brand. But
Yeah.
it really pains me when I see kind of globally pretty good brands like Uber and Airbnb, even they kind of, when they come to India, like the only route they go is let's just hire like this Bollywood guy or this cricketer and build a brand on top of that. That's a very lazy trope. OnePlus for me, like, OnePlus is a phenomenal brand. I don't know why they needed to rope in Amitabh Bachchan to kind of, it just seems it smells of laziness to me somehow. Like I feel like there's a more creative route to build a personality or an identity than borrowing one. I think for B2B marketers, and especially marketers that I interact with on a day-to-day basis, I feel like there is, especially younger marketers that I interact with, I think there is a very, I feel like because marketing has become so ROI and attribution and, metric driven, I feel like we're building a generation of marketers who don't want to do things because they're good. They only want to do things because they can prove its outcomes. And that's pretty problematic. It's a deeper problem that I sense is happening in marketing as a profession, not just in India, it's happening worldwide. I feel, if the early stage of my career, if everything that I did was done with the lens of, how will this look at my mid-year review or end-year review, I would have not done half of the crazy things that I ended up doing.
Yeah.
And I think there is marketing is a profession of experimentation, taking bets and kind of pouring your heart and soul into it, and sometimes things working and sometimes not working. But I genuinely think that that's become a huge problem, at least in B2B or tech marketing, where everything is kind of focused on what's the shortest path to get to that provable outcome or metric in the CRM, as opposed to doing things for what should be done.
Awesome point. Yeah.
Ouch.
I mean, you guys come from a content background, and I'm sure you've seen this. I have struggled very hard wherever I've worked to kind of link content to pure business outcomes, right? Like I mean, we all understand that over a period of time, if you do content well, there will be more organic traffic or more faster lead conversion and all of those things. But how is this one individual blog or how is this one individual white paper going to contribute to the top line or bottom line? Those are, I feel like we unnecessarily deliberate some of these decisions and kind of force content marketers to also only focus on, okay, I'm just going to write blogs on things which will get immediate leads. I'm not going to write on something which doesn't get leads. Those kind of decisions I feel like are really hampering marketing technology companies.
Yeah. And in fact, I noticed this, Shobhit. So people tend to do, let me just, or maybe just, let's say marketers tend to do things that they can prove to the people on the review meeting, right? They've got maximum number of leads to this, but how many of those leads are actually converting? That's the thing that people aren't looking enough into.
I mean, good point. Yeah.
So the freedom to explore, so the freedom to actually do what matters, those are beautiful points, Shobhit. And also, can you also touch upon, so you mentioned that maybe these are things we shouldn't do, but what do you think? So you already mentioned saying don't just focus on these, you already gave us hints there, but can you emphasize a little more and throw light on, this is what I'd love to see marketers do?
I mean, I would say, when I hire for marketers who had some amount of experience, I almost always ask them, what was the one thing that you did which spectacularly failed? And I think if you've gone through 4 to 5 years of marketing and not kind of spend a good month or two doing something which was just a complete disaster, I feel like we've not done marketing correctly. When we were talking about great brands, we talk about Apple and we talk about Tesla. I mean, Tesla is a fairly new brand, but let's say Apple, right? So Apple, everybody remembers the big wins, right? But they had a fair share of disasters on the way. I find it hard to believe that somebody can go a significant time in marketing without kind of putting a big bet on something and failing at it. And to me, if somebody's not done that, then I think they're playing very, very safe. So, I think taking big bets and doubling, tripling down on them till they reach like a natural conclusion and, being able to kind of count success and failure. I feel like that's what marketers should do more of.
Beautiful, Shobhit. Always keep experimenting. I resonate with that on so many levels, and that was extremely reassuring to hear as well. Thank you for that.
And so few marketers realize that, right? And disasters are meant for the backburners. But nobody is proud of talking about their failures. But Shobhit is so spot on talk about your disasters. That's where the biggest lessons are probably being learned. Yeah. And on that note,
and you only fail spectacularly if you try something audacious, right? Like if you do the safe things, you'll never fail, right? So that's that. I think for me, that's the bigger thing, right? If you don't take a bet, you will never lose. So failure only comes from taking a very risky bet.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's so interesting you mentioned that. So I'd really like to ask you this. What would you tell, Shobhit, to somebody who's starting their career in marketing? Somebody, I mean, in India, people stumble upon marketing. Nobody ever says that I want to become a marketer when I grow up. Right? So what would you suggest to the people who are starting off their careers, maybe 20, 22 years, 23 years? What is that suggestion from you, Shobhit?
I don't know. I think it goes back to what I was saying. If what you want out of your career is constant wins and praises and plaudits and recognition, then I feel like marketing is not the profession for you. Is what I would say. I think maybe sales, maybe customer success, maybe engineering. Jobs where there's always you're always on the firing line, and every small accomplishment is a win or a loss. I think marketing is a profession where you have to accept that no matter what happens, for the most part, you are going to be the best judge of your own work. Very rarely will you be in an environment where, you know, the ecosystem around you will have a very easy way to know whether or not you did a good job. You know, sometimes you will end up doing something really well, but maybe your immediate supervisor or your business will not see it because, you know, there is an incubation period to these things, and there is a lack of tying to outcomes to certain marketing activities. I think, you know, like people who take pleasure at doing things for the sake of doing them versus doing things for like praises and plaudits and stuff like that. I mean, I think they should get into a career of marketing, right? Like if you enjoy cooking or gardening or writing or painting in your free time, you know, these are activities which, you know, not everybody paints to sell them in a gallery. You know, a lot of people just sell because it's a therapeutic experience. So, you know, people who have that strain in their makeup, I think should take up marketing. But people who do things always for outcomes and for rewards are probably not more suited to this stream or this function.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a nice trait that you brought along. Today, LinkedIn has become a place where people are showcasing their skills, right? I've seen people lift weights on LinkedIn. I've seen some people play the piano on LinkedIn and showing off. But I think they are creating the brand for themselves as well for the company. That, hey, you know what, I work at this cool place, right? Yeah.
Right.
Cool. I just have one more question with the marketer centric, with the beginner marketer centric question, and that is, Shobhit, what are the resources that you would recommend, and what are the places that you go and get your knowledge from? I'm sure you read a lot, but what are the places? Could be a podcast, could be ebooks, could be blogs, could be anything from your end. What do you recommend to us, Shobhit?
I mean, I honestly, you know, if you're doing an MBA, then obviously like your standard textbooks, Kotler, Acker, like I would say, pour over them, you know, start to end, go through every case study that you can, and, you know, maybe do like a little bit of research, because some of these books are like frozen in time, right? Like, so Kotler, for instance, had this very famous Hertz versus some other car rental company in the US, and, you know, Avis, Hertz versus Avis case study of how Avis was number 2 and they made that a strength for themselves. You know, and some of these are like, you know, frozen in time. So this is very in the 80s. I think both Hertz and Avis are in severe distress right now. But I think, like, you know, kind of just reading these case studies and reading these textbooks gives you a lot of insight into really marketing. And, you know, it's easier said than done. Like, you know, when I started marketing, you more or less were an MBA in marketing to kind of get into marketing, but that's not true anymore. So I feel like there's a lot of marketers out there who, you know, not even read their Kotler and Acker. So at the very least, I would say, you know, if you're like out of an engineering college getting into marketing, or, you know, some roundabout way, go back and read like the 2 or 3 kind of basic books of Kotler, Acker. Those are 2 that I remember. I'm sure there's more. So yeah, read the text. I think if, you know, one skill that I find has been really useful for me in marketing, and one discipline that I study a lot on, is behavioral economics. So, you know, you should know your economics well and read like, there's a book that is like a really good starting point, a book called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. So, you know, so that's a pretty good starting point, because that gives you insights into how, you know, I mean, the whole job of marketing, in my view, is to kind of tap into people's rationality in a way, right? Like, you know, if everybody makes the rational decisions all the time, then, you know, there is no place for like 2 companies in the same market. So I think insights into, you know, what makes people irrational, how do they respond irrationally. There used to be a, you know, fairly famous podcast come book called Freakonomics. I don't know if that's still on, but yeah, so Freakonomics as a book, and their podcast and their blog. So, you know, resources like this really, there's Nudge by Richard Thaler, which is also the same thing. You know, how do you kind of get people to do, you know, nudge people essentially to do small things. So really, I think that's a good second starting point, apart from your marketing text, to like understand human psychology, understand how, you know, economic decisions are also kind of built in our, you know, psyche, and built in, you know, a lot of kind of historical factors. So understanding that definitely helps with marketing decisions. I mean, so many of the things that we kind of do day to day in marketing, like adding free, or, you know, stocks available till offer available till stocks last, and, you know, all these things are like there are very strong, I mean, proven, you know, economic reasons behind it.
Yeah.
And the more you know of them, the more you can kind of leverage that in your day-to-day marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Offer lasts until offer ends. Offer exists.
Offer open until stocks last.
Yeah. I mean that shows the scarcity
Yeah.
thing, and you scaring people off. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So Shobhit, we are almost nearing the end of this conversation, and we are
Okay, great.
coming to the point which is the most exciting, which our people have voted as the best part of this whole part of all conversations.
Okay.
And that's the rapid fire round. So the rapid fire round will be, I'll ask you a few questions. You can give responses, single word responses. Some of them you can definitely buck the trend if you want to ask more, if you want to answer more. But the response timeline is 5 seconds. So let's
Sure.
start now. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Who's your favorite salesperson or marketer?
Steve Jobs. It's a cliched answer, but I think he still wins it. Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite brand?
My favorite brand would be. I'm a big fan of Disney. I think Disney. Disney plus Marvel. Disney. Yeah.
Who's your favorite author?
Michael Lewis.
Michael Lewis.
He's a non-fictional author. He writes about Michael Lewis.
Michael Lewis. Awesome. Who's your favorite entrepreneur?
Favorite entrepreneur. Jimmy Wales. I think the guy who started Wikipedia.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Who's your favorite movie star?
Favorite movie star. Clint Eastwood.
Okay. Awesome. What keeps Shobhit awake at 2 a.m. in the morning?
Nothing. I am a very early sleeper. If I'm up at 2 a.m., it's mostly because I'm having fun doing something. So, either kind of, reading a book that I want to finish, or I want to, with the company of people that I want to spend more time with. I don't think there is anything worth staying up at 2 a.m. for.
Okay. Awesome. If Shobhit could have a billboard for himself and write anything on that billboard that's on a highway, what would that be?
I don't know. I don't like putting a scanner to myself. I think I would just say, it will all be okay. I feel like people need that reminder every day in their lives.
Yeah. And if you have the opportunity to have dinner with 3 people, either living or dead, who would that 3 people be and why?
I think Jurgen Klopp. I'm a huge fan of Liverpool Football Club. So yeah, he's the manager. Him. I'm really struggling. Mahatma Gandhi maybe, or like anybody from the Indian freedom struggle. Mahatma Gandhi is obviously an easy pick, but I would love to understand more from their perspective and see where we are as compared to what they thought we would be at.
Awesome.
Who would be the third person? Yeah, I mean, I think one of my grandparents. I mean, I would just always relish the opportunity to have one more interaction with them than the number of times I met them. So yeah, any one of my grandparents would be the third one.
The last rapid fire question would be, what would you have become if not a marketer?
I want to think sports writer. Like that was my, that was what I wanted to be. But I think if I was not a marketer, I would be a mediocre salesperson.
Okay. Super.
Nice. Thank you so much, Shobhit. Such interesting perception. So we always believe that it is the lenses we wear and the ones we see the world with what make it beautiful. So thank you for adding such a beautiful lens today. There's one question as we near towards the end of our conversation, Shobhit. If there is one thing that you want all our people listening to this with us, if you want to do one thing after listening to this, what would it be?
I think I would go back and say, just look at your jobs that you have, or, and think about what is the one thing that, you want to do, but you've always kind of felt that, maybe your boss or maybe your organization would not allow you to do. And really spend a day thinking about why that is, right? Like maybe you've not built a strong enough case. Maybe you've not kind of done like sometimes it just takes doing 10, 20% of something and showing a real output instead of an idea. And, really question hard and say, look, I want to do this, but I'm not allowed to do it. So what will it take for me to get to do this? And put yourself on the path to doing it. And I feel like if you do that, then you will uncover things about yourself that you probably don't know right now.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Live life dangerously. All right, Shobhit, thank you so much. I loved each and every minute of that. So I'm sure that a lot of us want to continue this conversation with you. Where can we find you after the show?
LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out to me.
Done. We'll make sure we leave Shobhit's LinkedIn profile there in the description. Thank you so much again, Shobhit. This was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys. Thank
Thanks
you.
for
I
your
really
time.
enjoyed talking to you. Yeah. Bye.
Cheers. Take care. Bye. Awesome conversation there, Kaushik with Shobhit. I loved his deep thoughts, and especially one that really stood out for me is when he spoke about interviewing candidates and asking them what was a disaster in your marketing. Because only when you try out an audacious thing, that does it end in a disaster. And that he probably was telling us, life comes a full circle when you try out everything and you've experienced successes as well as disasters, right? I loved his deep thoughts on that.
True. I I cannot even count the number of things fell flat as you mentioned. They're all long history now. Let's not bring them up. So one thing which really stuck for me as well was his whole idea of experimentation.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. So I think we've had these conversations as well in our other episodes in which I spoke about how I released a YouTube episode at 9 in the night. So it's always about experimentation, and without experimenting you cannot be a marketer. It's just not possible. So
Correct.
those were beautiful points again.
Yeah, and the point about experimentation is something that I'm finding most of our guests are saying that, and I'm sure our people listening, our people watching us will love it because it gives them the courage to try something new, and the market will accept them. People will accept them. Shobhit was telling about, if you are painting for yourself, you're cooking for yourself, or gardening, that probably is early indications that you can be a great marketer, right?
True. Oh yeah, now I'm gonna bring up my fitness and my ukulele. Anyway,
Awesome.
that's all right. Thank you so much. What were your biggest takeaways from Shobhit's conversation? Let us know in the comments below. Also, what other topics do you want us to discuss on? Let us know, and we will bring the expert from the industry here for you and share their story with you. Also, you do not want to miss out on all the beautiful conversations we have lined up for you, all these stories we have just for you. So make sure you hit on that subscribe button, and we will see you in the next one.
Cheers, guys.